The Urmia lectures are presented in the Urantia Book, paper 134, The Transition Years, as a concentrated, unusually formal teaching cycle delivered during Jesus' caravan trip to the Caspian Sea in April 1 AD 24 to April 1 AD 25. The text narrates that Jesus served as caravan conductor for a year-long journey that routed, as described, from Jerusalem via a chain of regions to the Caspian Sea, and on the return he relinquished caravan command at Lake Urmia, staying slightly over 2 weeks. Paper 134 then situates an interreligious temple of the philosophy of religions on an island near Urmia, where a wealthy merchant named Simuitton and his sons host scheduled multi-faith lectures, discussions, and evening debates. Jesus first participates informally, then agrees to return to deliver 24 lectures on the Brotherhood of Men, plus 12 evening sessions of Q&A/debate. The text stresses that this Urmia cycle is portrayed as the most systematic single-subject teaching episode attributed to Jesus in the book, explicitly reframing the theme as the kingdom of God and the kingdoms of men. Paper 134 frames the Urmia episode within a transition period after a wider travel phase, describing a return to Galilee and family matters, then a full year away as caravan conductor. The text says that while preparing to leave Nazareth, Jesus took the place of an ill caravan conductor. Anticipating a year-long absence, he convened a family meeting and arranged for his mother and youngest sister to move to Capernaum. The caravan journey is dated precisely, the 1st of April AD 24. The described route states that the caravan was going from Jerusalem by way of Damascus and Lake Urmia through Assyria, Media, and Parthia to the southeastern Caspian Sea region, and that it took a full year until return. Paper 134 emphasizes the experiential dimension. Jesus is portrayed not only as a traveler, but as an executive responsible for goods, safety, and management of passengers, guards, and camel drivers, with the trip characterized as both exploration and personal ministry. On the outward leg, Jesus is said to have stopped several days at Urmia for recuperation. The narrative locates a lecture amphitheater on a nearby island and describes it as dedicated to the spirit of religion and functioning as a temple of the philosophy of religions. Simuitton is introduced as a wealthy merchant citizen who built this temple with his 3 sons. The founder is said to have lived and died without revealing his own personal religious beliefs, an internal narrative detail that frames the institution as structurally pluralist and procedurally tolerant. The daily rhythm is described with unusual specificity: 10 a.m. morning lectures, 3 p.m. afternoons, 8 p.m. evening debates, and the site is described as hosting many traditions, more than 30 religions and religious cults, roughly 75 teachers, cottage living arrangements, and periodic rotation by lot at each new moon. The system includes a hard enforcement mechanism. Intolerance or disruptive contentiousness brings prompt and summary dismissal. Within the Urantia narrative, the Urmia institution functions as a microcosm for interreligious encounter. It is explicitly multi-tradition in staffing, requires a minimal theological condition, recognition of a supreme deity, and neutralizes conflict through strict anti-intolerance enforcement and rotating membership. Textually, this resembles an idealized, controlled environment for demonstrating A, how plural communities might handle doctrinal difference without coercion, and B, how Jesus, presented as an independent teacher, can articulate a unifying frame without establishing sectarian dominance. The text claims that Jesus participated in discussions during the first stop. Then, before departing Urmia, Simuitton arranged a return sojourn, 2 weeks to deliver 24 lectures on the Brotherhood of Men, plus 12 evening sessions specifically dedicated to discussion and debate. On the return journey from the Caspian region, paper 134 states that Jesus gave up the direction of the caravan at Lake Urmia, remained slightly over 2 weeks, then continued as a passenger with a later caravan to Damascus and onward to Capernaum, arriving April 1 AD 25. Paper 134 explicitly elevates this episode. It calls the Urmia lectures the most systematic and formal of Jesus' teaching on Urantia and asserts he never before or after spoke so extensively on one topic. It then reframes the topic as not merely brotherhood, but the kingdom of God and the kingdoms of men. Immediately following the narrative setup, paper 134 inserts a bracketed editorial note describing how the Urmia teachings were produced for the revelation. The book explicitly tells the reader that an initial summary of the Urmia teachings caused a dispute among celestial administrators, and that the published version is an adaptation by 3 secondary midwayers under further oversight by a Melchizedek chair. It claims that midwayers first summarized the teachings, but disagreements between seraphim of the churches and seraphim of progress led to commissioning 3 secondary midwayers to adapt the teachings to 20th century contexts under a Melchizedek chair's editorial oversight. This creates a layered authority model. 1. An asserted historical teaching event. 2. A midwayer summary. 3. A later midwayer restatement. 4. Melchizedek editing. And 5. An explicit aim to apply teachings to 20th century religious political conditions. The ensuing sections, sovereignty, divine and human, political sovereignty, and law, liberty, and sovereignty, articulate a structured argument. Religious peace depends on acknowledging God's spiritual sovereignty. Political peace depends on transcending unlimited national sovereignty toward a representative world government. Liberty depends on enforceable law and bounded freedom. The Urmia teaching content argues that religious peace cannot exist if religions claim exclusive ecclesiastical sovereignty. Peace requires surrendering spiritual sovereignty to God alone. This is presented as a structural diagnosis. Attempts by any religion to assert superiority will generate intolerance and persecution. Paper 134 explicitly defines brotherhood as grounded in the fatherhood of God and defines the kingdom of heaven as a spiritual relationship between God and humanity, framing unity as spiritual rather than institutional uniformity. This is doctrinally significant inside the Urantia framework because it ties social ethics, brotherhood, to metaphysics, God as spirit, and to anthropology, a fragment of God's spirit indwelling humans, producing an equality claim that cuts across caste, class, and economic status. The paper uses the Urmia school itself as a worked example. The religionists are said to live in comparative peace because they surrender spiritual sovereignty while maintaining a strong social authority structure in Simuitton's presidency. Doctrinally, this is one of the Urmia lecture's most distinctive contributions relative to many traditional exclusivist religious models. It advances a strong pluralist ecumenical thesis while still requiring theism, some sort of supreme deity, as a boundary condition for participation. The text's political sovereignty argument is blunt. War will not end while nations cling to unlimited national sovereignty, and lasting peace requires surrender of war-making power to a representative global government. The content includes explicit modern illustrations, the American Federal Union, the 48 states, and explicit forward-looking claims, global regulation of money and trade, possible global language, possibility of global religions. Textually, the paper itself marks these passages as particularly adapted. It states that, because political life has evolved dramatically since Jesus' time, the presentation departed more widely from the substance of the Master's teachings, while aiming to depict the import of those teachings for the 20th century. The doctrinal significance inside Urantia theology is that brotherhood is treated as a two-level project. Religion underwrites spiritual unity, but governance structures are required to operationalize social, economic, political stability, mankind government. Jesus departed Urmia at the close of his 2-week sojourn, traveling westward as a passenger on a later caravan to Damascus, then on to Capernaum. He never returned to Urmia. After the death of Simuitton, his sons encountered growing difficulties maintaining a peaceful faculty. Simuitton's eldest son appealed to Abner at Philadelphia for help. Abner's choice of Christian teachers was unfortunate. They proved unyielding and uncompromising, seeking to make their religion dominant over all others. Critically, they never suspected that the oft-cited lectures of the caravan conductor had been delivered by Jesus himself. As confusion and contention increased, the three brothers withdrew their financial support. The school closed after 5 years. Later, it was reopened as a Mithraic temple and eventually burned down in connection with one of their orgiastic celebrations. Theologically, this functions as a cautionary tale about institutional capture. When a group tries to make its religion dominant, the pluralist equilibrium collapses. As narrative rhetoric, it reinforces the Urmia lecture's core anti-supremacist thesis.